This is episode 21 with Matt Trinetti.
Welcome to the Quarter Life Comeback Podcast, the show that empowers you to become the hero of your life's journey. With your host, Brian Tier.
Hey guys and girls, welcome back to another episode of the Quarter Life Comeback Podcast, episode 21 today, and I'm very excited to be speaking to Matt Trinetti. Now, Matt is a former consultant turned deliberate journeyer and TEDx speaker who took a 7-month sabbatical to Iceland after the passing of a close friend. Matt had been feeling a sense of, is this it in his job? Not hating life, but also not loving it. However, after his friend's passing, Matt decided to fulfill a promise he'd made himself for years, to slow travel around Europe with no fixed plans, guided only by his curiosity and interest. Upon his return, Matt decided to quit that job and now helps other young adults find more meaningful work via Escape the City, which we mentioned in the episode. Now, this interview is packed with some awesome tips and resources, and we get into some really powerful stuff. And you can check out all those resources that we mentioned in the show notes at briantier.com/021. In this episode, you're going to learn the biggest lessons Matt learned during his 7-month sabbatical to Iceland, why pausing certain relationships may be good for you, is travel the golden ticket for everyone, how to start finding more meaningful work, why thinking harder isn't the way to figure things out and what is, and how to use little projects to find your direction without quitting your job yet. As I said, you can catch all the links and resources we mentioned at briantier.com/021. But for now, let's go hang out with Matt. Welcome back, everyone, and a big welcome to today's guest. I'm speaking to Matt Trinetti. Matt, welcome to the Quarter Life Comeback.
Hey, Brian. Thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's a pleasure having you on. And I first came across your work from my girlfriend who referred me to your podcast and she's your TED Talk, sorry. And she was like, you've got to get this guy on your podcast and he's got a really awesome story. So for everyone listening, I wonder if you could just share that story with us and you know, your quarter life journey.
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks so much for watching the talk. Glad your girlfriend found it. I guess the story in that talk is what I was trying to describe was my story in when I took a sabbatical from my job at IBM. So I had been working for IBM for about 5 years. I studied engineering at university in the US and took a job with IBM as a consultant, like many of my friends and peers, because that's just what people did. And that's the whole purpose or what I thought the purpose of going to university was, to skill up to then get a job and to make money and kind of fit inside society in that way. So what I ended up taking a sabbatical, kind of a long story that led to that. But, I hit a point of, and this is a lot of, what happens to a lot of people, I find is any sort of big life change is a lot of times it comes to some, impetus, some, kind of shit hitting the fan moment, tragedy, illness, something. And so for me, I had a close friend pass away. And all of a sudden, these big life questions that I was asking myself, they came to the forefront and they were shouting in my ear of like, what is your life about? Who are you? What are you meant to become? And all these things I'd done a great job at keeping quiet while at work for those 5 years, knowing that I thought I was meant for something else. But I just wasn't sure where to start. So, that kind of gave me the courage to, just start somewhere. And for me, it was an unrealized dream of slow travel. And as an American, we get these neatly partitioned 2-week holidays, 10 days if you're lucky. And I would use those to just go as far as I could and, spend a week somewhere, but it just wasn't satisfying. Something that I felt deep within me was I just wanted to explore places at my own pace. And I had never really done that before. So, so I guess long story short, that TED Talk was, is about that journey of saying yes to something where I wasn't sure how it would end up, and moving from an engineer's life of probabilities to what would happen if I just kind of said yes to these adventures and let the journey unfold.
Yeah, I actually also studied and worked for a couple of years as a civil engineer.
Okay.
So I can relate to that kind of logical thinking. But when you were in your job, did you realize you were, this wasn't quite it? Or was it only once the tragedy happened where you sort of took a step back and said that it wasn't what you really wanted?
Yeah, I think I always kind of knew that it wasn't quite it. If I'm really honest, I actually remember the moment where it hit me. I was reading a book. This was within my first year. It was The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. I know that's inspirational to a lot of people, but for me, the most inspirational thing was the way he was articulating life and work, and he was articulating something that I believed, but I hadn't yet been able to articulate myself. And that kind of got the wheels flowing. So I knew that it wasn't, that I was probably meant for something else, something more. I wasn't sure where to start really. So it was kind of a slow festering feeling.
Yeah, cool. And then, I mean, you said you decided to make a change, and quite a drastic change. You took a 7-month sabbatical to Iceland. What do you think were the biggest things you learned during that time?
Oh man, I learned so much. So much. Yeah. So, what are the biggest things I learned? I think I learned that was in exercise in getting in touch with my own intuition and trusting it and trusting those gut feelings. I feel like I'm pretty intuitive by nature, but I had never really given myself a playground and time and permission, probably ever in my life, where I could just do whatever I wanted to do and follow those little curiosities, follow those little whispers of intuition. So for me, I think that's the biggest thing, is just learning, hearing what that voice sounds like, and then trusting to go and chase after it. That's probably the biggest learning. I was exposed to emotions that I had never really felt before, and highs, but also lows. So loneliness, that was really interesting. But what I think the learning out of that was, I learned to appreciate all emotions. So not just highs and saying, okay, high, good, happiness, those are good emotions, and sadness, loneliness, those are bad. To actually, they're all rich emotions, and they're all really great. Some just make us feel worse than others, but there's actually a lot of great information in those emotions. So I think those are probably the two biggest things. And then a bunch of other stuff too.
Yeah. Now you touched on loneliness there. I wanted to ask, and I've thought about this a lot lately with my own sort of decisions to make and stuff, but how do you maintain relationships if your lifestyle does, and I'm not saying you in particular, I mean, if someone listening to this, if their lifestyle or the one that they're considering involves a lot of traveling and not traveling as in like going on a vacation, but living this lifestyle, how do you maintain relationships, whether that be like romantically or just socially?
Yeah, I think it's really hard. So I've actually, contrary to my TED Talk, I've been living in London for the past 2 years now. So I live here. So I travel, but it's more on short term. And so what I've been able to do is, I've been able to foster some of those relationships, here in London. But it is really hard. So I guess two things. The first is that, sometimes I don't think it's a bad thing, I don't want to say break away from those relationships, but kind of take a pause on them, to help understand yourself. So for me, I think I'm a pretty sensitive person, as in I'm heavily influenced by stimuli and other people. And so this the sabbatical for me and leaving and taking a pause on that, I was able to get clarity on my own voice. Because anytime you're making a decision, or just inherently by living with people, you're influenced. And so I guess the first thing is that, maybe I think maintaining relationships is tough when you're traveling, but actually maybe it's also important to take a pause from those to help understand yourself. But yeah, it's tough. I mean, I still struggle to really, it's actually a big thing for me is staying in touch with family, friends I care about. It is really hard. And I haven't figured out a way to really do it well. So yeah, I'll just say that I whoever's struggling with that, I hear you, because I think it's a really tough one.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously a lot easier these days with Skype and Google Hangouts and even just a mobile phone. So it's not all doom and gloom, I guess. No,
definitely. And I think I try to be more present with the people when I am with them. So when I do go back home, or when I do go to visit friends, I really try to be in that moment and to really savor it and soak it up.
Yeah.
And I hope that helps strengthen the relationships.
Matt, you mentioned earlier about finding your own voice and all that stuff, like sort of inner learning that you went through.
Mm-hmm.
Something that I've been pondering lately as well is, a lot of people get into a situation where they're unhappy with their work or where they are in their life, and travel seems like the solution. But what I wanted to know is, do you think traveling like that is the answer for everyone, or is it more a case of putting yourself in an environment that allows you to do that inner learning?
Yeah, I would say the latter. I think it's less of I think travel is a great vehicle to explore that, because I think by the physical journey is able to mimic the internal journey, and just everything that represents. I think there's a real temptation of travel or gap year or all this stuff to be just another form of escapism, of kind of running from something.
Yeah.
One of the things I was trying to do, and this is actually when I started a blog and a website, and I started writing when I went on this trip, and the tagline for my site, so it's Give, Live, Explore, and then the tagline I made it Tales from a Deliberate Journeyer. And so what I was trying to do is I wanted to make it more deliberate, as in I didn't want it to be an escape. I wanted this to be less of an escape from and more of an escape into, and starting to form that foundation of a new life for myself and growing. I do think there's a reason a lot of people do travel. I think there's something about it that it kind of checks a lot of boxes that helps people with that introspection and self-inquiry. But I also think it could be another form of escapism.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually shared, like an insight I had through asking myself all these questions. I shared this with my mentor, and I said to him, like, something that I figured out is it's not so much that I wanted to be overseas, but more that I wanted to create a life of freedom where I had the ability to be overseas if I wanted to be. I think that's quite an important distinction.
Definitely. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think, and actually when I think back to myself, I think that was the exact same driver, or one of the drivers is I wanted to put myself in the kind of lifestyle I wanted to have. And so, yeah, it was kind of that very same thing.
Yeah. Also, like I kind of brainstormed pros and cons of leaving or staying. And I mean, I live in a really beautiful city, so it wasn't like I was trying to get away. And I realized like a lot of the stuff that I was trying to create out of traveling, I can already do. Yeah. So I think for me, it was also like trying to take an easy way out, or thinking that it would have been the golden ticket. Not that I don't want to travel. I mean, I have backpacked solo before, and I definitely plan on doing more stuff like that. But I think for right now, for the reasons that I was thinking of going, it wouldn't have been the right move.
Yeah. Do you know, there's a book, I think it's on meditation. I haven't read it yet, by John Kabat-Zinn. The title is Wherever You Go, There You Are. And I think that's kind of a powerful mantra, because I think a lot of times we think, oh, when I get to that place, when this happens, when that happens, then everything will be sorted. Then I'll be happy. Then I'll be figured out. And and I think the purpose of this book, it's just, well, you get to that place, but guess what? It's still constant. You're still you, and you still have to deal with your own internal stuff.
Yeah. Cool. So, You went on this journey. Talk us through, what happened when you got back. You said you now live in London and you've been there for about 2 years. But what happened when you got back, and where you at now?
Sure. Yeah. So I went on that trip, and it was actually a sabbatical. So I was going to quit, but I ended up asking for a sabbatical instead. I came back. I lasted about 2 weeks back at the job, and I'm just like, I know this isn't for me. So then I quit. So that was 2013. And 2013 was a really tough year for me. It was really exciting, but it was also very tough because I was avoiding going back to a full-time position, like IBM. I wasn't ready to give up on, I wanted to continue trying to form my own path. And so I did a bunch of different projects. I continued with the writing. I launched a book publishing project with a friend, who had written about the beginning of the trip to Iceland. So we published that book called Tales of Iceland. And so I was promoting that book, and we were working on a second book. So I was kind of just taking on a bunch of different projects, to try to keep this path going wherever it was going to lead. And then at the end of 2013 into 2014 is when I got involved with Escape the City in London, which was a website that I had started following when I was in Chicago at IBM. And it was basically articulating all these things about work and life that I believed and the tagline that they had was, life is too short to do work that doesn't matter. And so I came to London a few times to explore some opportunities with them. And then in 2014, came here permanently to help launch something called the Escape School in London, which is a place where people can gather and talk about some of these big life questions and people who are feeling stuck and discontent in their work. And we form communities and programs to help people do something about it and make change, even if they're not sure exactly what they want to do yet.
Yeah, and that's a perfect segue into where I want to take this conversation now is for the people listening that are stuck in a job that they don't find meaning or they feel like it doesn't matter. What tips would you give to someone in that situation? Both to find meaningful work and just to, find meaning in what they're doing, possibly.
Yeah, it's a really tough question, and we do these programs that are 3 months long. To try to help people get direction. But what we kind of say at the beginning of these programs even is that, hey, this is going to take a long time. It's going to take much longer than 12 weeks. And it's going to be really tough, and it's going to be uncomfortable, and you're not going to know what you're doing, and it's going to get darker before it gets lighter. So not to make it doom and gloom, but just to say that these are very difficult problems. These are very difficult questions, but they're also very privileged problems and privileged questions. And so I guess the way you phrase the question, it's first to acknowledge just the ability to be discontent in the work that you're doing, and to be in a position to start to ask these questions where you're knocking at the ceiling of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Self-actualization. So to just kind of take a moment to be a little grateful for that and be like, wow, like what a great position I'm in that I can actually ask these questions.
First world problems.
Yeah, so I guess that's a little gratitude and just being like, okay, but it also isn't meant to stop you from asking those questions, because they are very important. This is something that we believe at Escape, and I believe personally, is that especially people who are in a position to be able to do work that matters to them, it's actually a duty that we have to the rest of the world, to pursue that and listen to that. And so, I guess, so that's one part of the question is like, feel okay with that, and gratitude for it. I guess how to do it. It's really tough, and it really depends on where you are in your journey. But a few things. There's a real tendency and a temptation for people to want to think their way into a new direction. And, you pick up all these books and you watch more TED Talks and you're like, oh, I just need to think harder. I need to figure this out. That's a phrase people love to use. I just need to figure this out. And what people end up doing is they keep thinking. And what we try to do in our programs here, and what we say, there's no silver bullet, but if there is one, it's action. And it's acting without knowing where you're going necessarily, and without knowing how it's going to end up, and without knowing what you're doing, which is really hard. But what we mean by action is something that engages with the world. Something that engages with another person, something where you're putting yourself out there, you're challenging your edge a bit, you're doing something uncomfortable, all in service of trying to learn more about yourself. So that's kind of the high level advice. But we could go deeper if that'd be helpful.
Yeah, and Jim Carrey in that famous speech of his, he says, as far as he's concerned, it's all about letting the universe know what you want and working towards it, but letting go of how it comes to pass. Which I think it ties into what you just said there about don't just try and think everything out, but actually take action, and even if you don't know where that's going.
Yeah, it's the idea of taking these little experiments. And so one of the things that when I look at my own experience, but other people who have made successful transitions, it's kickstarting little projects with an experimental mindset. So it doesn't have to be quit your job huge. It doesn't have to be, go on a 7-month wander huge. It can be what's a little project that you can start in a direction that excites you, and you don't have to worry about it being the direction or the one true thing you're going to do. Just it has to be a direction that excites you. And just what's a little project that has a start date and an end date, or a set number of tasks, a set number of things. So for me, one of the things I thought I wanted to do, or when I was thinking about it on my travels, was, travel blogger. It's like where the brain goes. It's like this really simple thing. I like to travel and I want to explore writing. Maybe I could be a travel blogger. But the project for me was, okay, well, what does a travel blogger do? And then actually do those things, and not just talk about it and think about it, but do it. And that includes writing and taking pictures and then sharing it. And what I learned through that is I didn't want to do that. I did like the travel, and I did like the writing part of it, and I wanted to continue with those. But as far as a profession, I'm like, actually, I don't think I would do this. But those kind of actions is what I mean when I say action. It's just doing it without waiting for permission, and just putting it out there.
Yeah, and I love that because a lot of people listening, like we touched on earlier, they might be feeling unfulfilled at work. But I know I did this, and I tell most people now not to. It's like, just quit their job and without really like thinking of what their plan B is. So this is perfect for someone in that situation. And just to recap then, so, even if you are still in your job and you're unhappy, you can think of the possible directions that you'd like to go and come up with sort of a mini test project with defined steps and deliverables, and then, execute on that and see if it's really what you want to do before you just jump ship into the thing you think is going to be the saving grace.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's another temptation to romanticize the destination of wherever it is. And so, how can you close the gap between, this fantasy destination of this thing of, I want to do this, or, that's where everything's going to be happy and fulfillment will be found there. So yeah, how can you actually put yourself in that situation and in that, and if that's even just volunteering for a day or having a conversation with someone who's currently doing that, how can you put yourself in it in the day to day so you can de-romanticize that destination?
I love it. Matt, you mentioned Escape the City earlier, and you mentioned the sort of 3-month programs that you have. What else can people expect to find when they head on over to Escape the City?
Yeah, so we do a couple things. So one, we have a jobs board, and so we tried to curate and select some of the most remarkable opportunities around the world. And usually it's some flavor of, it's either exotic location or exciting company or a startup or something like that. So generally things that are hopefully more exciting to escape into. They're primarily London-based, but we're always trying to get more opportunities. So if you look on the website, you'll see that. And then in London, we have these programs called Tribes, and these are the 3-month programs. One of them is called the Escape Tribe, and the other is called the Startup Tribe. And the Escape Tribe is more for kind of the people in my situation when I was at IBM. So it's the if not this, then what? And it's helping people find direction and do these little experiments and projects to begin to learn about their future potential directions. And then Startup Tribe is more for people who have an idea, a bunch of ideas, and they want to test it out in the real world. And both of these, and this is the main part of what we do, they're community experiences, learning by doing community experiences. So each tribe will have 50 people max. And it's really powerful when you get people together talking about these big things and making small steps forward. And so we try to base a lot of the school and the programs we do here around those principles of community, action, accountability. So those are the two main things. And we're actually about to launch a pilot and a bunch of cities where we have community, but we don't really have much else there as far as programs and other stuff. So we're starting to kind of as quickly as we can, but with high quality is start to release some of these programs to different cities. So that's one thing.
Yeah.
And then I've actually been launching an online course, which is the first of its kind. So we're about halfway through that. And we have about 20 people from 9 countries on it. So this is a test for us, and hopefully we'll have more programs. We're trying to take some of the education and community from our London programs onto these online programs. So I would say look out for those.
Yeah, I gotcha. I love it. And you guys have such a cool mission, like to, help 1 million people start doing work they love, which I think is so cool. So I'll definitely link that up in the show notes.
Definitely.
Just out of interest, I spoke about startups with Dakin Park in our last interview, episode 20. Have you had any cool startups come out of any of those tribes?
Yeah, we have. Yeah, there's a bunch coming out. And because of, I think what we specialize is in the start. So we help people kind of kick it off. So I think time will tell which one of those become cool things. It's everything from food and drink to tech to a bunch of stuff. One of my favorite stories is there's a company startup called Pip and Nut, which is a nut butter business. So almonds and cashew butter, and the girl Pippa Murray started it. And
love that name.
Yes, yeah, it's really great. And she's all over London. Her products are everywhere. So that's one of my favorite stories at the moment.
Cool, Matt. I want to be mindful of the time here, but there's just a couple of last questions I want to ask. What do you wish you'd been told at the start of your 20s?
At the start of my 20s.
Well, in your mid 20s even.
Yeah. No. I think. I wish I was told that. That it's okay if you don't know what you want to do for the rest of your life. And that actually you're just embarking on a journey to get closer to that. I think there's a lot of angst with people coming out of university feeling like they've done something wrong if they don't know what they want to do. And I wish someone told me that, hey, that's cool. That's actually part of this. And university didn't necessarily set you up to figure out what you want to do. It set you up to do a job, and, just have courage and just follow your path wherever you feel like it's pulling you.
Yeah, I love that. If people are listening to this and they want to find out more about Escape the City, or you personally, or they want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for people to do that?
Yeah, so Escape the City, we're escapethecity.org. So you can go there, check us out. And yeah, myself, you can visit my website. It's giveliveexplore.com. And I'm on Twitter at Trinetti, Trinetti. Yeah, and then all the social channels. But yeah, my website is a great place if people want to check out my writing and projects.
Perfect. And I'll be sure to link up all that stuff we mentioned in the show notes. Matt, before I get to the final question, I just want to take a second to acknowledge you and thank you for coming on today. But more so acknowledging your personal journey that you've gone through. I think a lot of people get unhappy in their situation and just sit there and accept that this is how things need to be. But you were proactive about it and took those steps, and I'm sure you're familiar with the hero's journey, with like the initiation and then the return, which I think is the key thing. Yeah, is you come back and you've used what you've learned now, and you're on a mission to help other people do the same thing. So I just want to acknowledge you for that.
Cool. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
No worries. The final question that I have is, what one action can listeners take this week to start their quarter life comeback?
One action is, okay. So this is an action for people who aren't sure where to start. Have you ever heard of something called an artist date?
The artist date? No.
Date. Yeah. So it's from a book, called, The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. Yeah. And it's a book to help creative people get unblocked. And one of her practices is something called an artist date, which is a once a week solo exercise where you take yourself on a date. And the idea is just to woo you. It's to go do something, follow something that's curious to you, give yourself permission to just do whatever you want to do, but you do it alone. You can be around other people, but you don't go with anyone that you know. So yeah, I think for anyone who's feeling like, I don't even know what I like, I don't even know where to start, I think that's a really great practice to start to get in touch with that inner voice and those inner curiosities, and just, go somewhere you've wanted to go. And if you feel, things bubbling up and saying, oh, that's interesting, or that person looks curious, just give yourself permission to go and do it.
And it doesn't need to be Iceland for 7 months. Right?
No, it doesn't. It was, it helps. Iceland's a beautiful place, but now it can be in your own backyard.
Gotcha. Matt Trinetti, thanks so much for coming on the Quarter Life Comeback.
Hey, thanks so much, Brian. I appreciate it.
So there you have it, guys. That wraps up episode 21 with Matt Trinetti. Really loved this episode. And if you liked it, make sure you share it around with your friends. I'd really appreciate that. The biggest takeaway for me must have been, besides, answering the call to our adventure and going on that hero's journey that each of us have, also the idea of little projects and testing out things that we may be interested in pursuing as a career without having to quit our job and putting ourselves under that added stress unnecessarily. So I encourage you to find your own little projects and answer the call to your own adventure, your own hero's journey. And I'd love to hear some of your biggest takeaways by tweeting me at Brian Tier. And once again, you can catch the show notes with the links and resources that we mentioned at briantier.com/021. And make sure you subscribe at quarterlifecomeback.com to get all these episodes as soon as they are released. But for now, keep creating your quarter life comeback.
Thanks for listening to the Quarter Life Comeback. Get started today by visiting briantier.com.